Thank you for joining us in the Leaders of Modern Finance. My name is Ken Boyd. I'm a four-time author, including the book Cost Accounting for Dummies. I'm a business writer, a former CPA, and I'm the content manager at Stampli. And joining me today is Fran Swain, the CFO of Central Valley Ag Cooperative. Fran, thanks for being here today.
Hey, happy to be here. Thanks a lot, Ken. Appreciate it.
Just for starters, tell us a little bit about what you do and your background.
So I've been in accounting finance my entire career, focused in agribusiness from way back in the 90s when we were running a smaller operation out of Northwest Iowa. Cash grain farm, 7,500 acres, grain elevator, crop input sales to farmers, things like that, all the way through to corn ethanol for a number of years. Made ice cream up in Lamar's, Iowa at the Blue Bunny Ice Cream Factory, if you all heard of that.
Sure.
And then was in Minneapolis with a company called GIS Incorporated for just about 6 years. And they're one of the nation's largest regional co-ops. We have to define those carefully, but a good experience.
That's great. That's great. What's the structure of your team? How many people involved in finance and accounting, and who do you report up to?
Sure. So I've been at Central Valley Ag now for going on just 10 months. And during that time, we've not had a lot of changes. The department was structured really very well. Probably 75 total folks in our accounting and IT department. So structurally, we do include IT up underneath finance. And, probably 40 accountants or so, and 20-ish, a little more maybe in information technology, and then another 15 in the, if you want to call it the ancillary roles, FP&A, internal audit, customer credit, member services, that sort of thing. And we all report, or I report directly to the CEO.
Okay, great. We'll get into that. It's interesting just seeing about a co-op after not looking at one for a long time, how much technology plays a part now. It's such a big piece. And this is maybe unique to a co-op, but what type of board structure do you have, and what types of metrics or financials do you report to the board?
Sure. So we are a farmer-owned co-op, right? And we can trace our roots back to probably 100 years ago, where the original co-op in this area was formed, and then over the years, almost every community had their own co-op, and they've merged together. And now, so we're spanning an area from Northwest Iowa down into Kansas, up into the northwestern corner of Nebraska. And as we've merged over the years, we brought these co-ops together. The board of directors would come into the co-op, and then we would sort through and manage those boards as we needed to, right? So, we'd have a lot more board members if we brought everyone in, into the boardroom. We're at, I believe, 21 right now, 21 board members, and pretty traditional board. The CEO is not a member of the board, but of course is, reports to the board. And you have to be a farmer or a producer to be a member. And and then of course, the board is an elected role. So they're assigned to geographical regions in our trade areas. And once, I'm not sure what the current role is in terms of who's up for re-electing or not, but I think it's don't quote me, I'm not sure what the term is, but there's an nomination election process to go through.
Okay. In that sense, it's like a board for a private or a public company.
Not much unlike, no.
Okay. Are there any, I think you mentioned in your notes to me that you do have an ERP system. Are there other tech tools you use in accounting and finance that are unique to co-ops? Anything related to co-ops?
Yeah, certainly the ERP system we're on is from a company called EFC Systems, and it's called Merchant Ag. and it is designed from the ground up specific for farmer-owned co-ops, or agribusiness co-ops, I should say. And so what's unique about that is they offer specific packages or ancillary systems for just the agronomy sales and management, right? So we handle prepaids a little differently. It's a very cyclical company, right? So, farmers apply fertilizer in the spring and in the fall, herbicide over the summer. And, the rest of the year, we might not have a lot of sales, right? So, to handle those types of transactions and managing the prepaids through that cycle is pretty unique. The ag industry is built upon kind of a rebate program within the herbicides and chemistries. And so there are components that will track the rebates and make sure we're following those very closely. The grain system itself, again, not ununique to the grain industry in the U.S., but we do have a system that records trucks as they pull into the scale with a simple card or member ID. Weights are tracked, grades are taken and whatnot all into the system, and then settled out as grain is priced or put towards contracts. There's a contract management component to that. So it becomes very complicated very fast, as you can imagine, and we've got a specific system to help us manage all those accounts. And then, energy is a little different too. We've got, several thousand propane customers and several thousand propane tanks. If you ever seen a propane tank sitting next to a house, that's the business we're in, right? Is we own that tank and we would supply propane to it. Of course, producers all run diesel equipment. So we've got tanks out in the country and that routing, keeping those tanks full, making sure we've got product when we need it and where we need it is also built into an ancillary system to what the general ledger would run off of. So very unique for sure. And, we're continuing to add to that. We use Power BI for a lot of reporting. We use lots of other services, in terms of a technology stack that, builds upon those core systems, including, looking at things like the Stampli products and others for expense automation and whatnot, which is probably our next set of projects is looking at our accounts payable processes.
Okay, interesting. That's interesting. What are some of the unique financial challenges that you face, considering that your organization's a co-op?
Well, we've very fortunate here. My predecessor's current CEO has been here a while, and they've built a tremendous balance sheet. So from a pure financing perspective, there's not a lot of challenges. We're running about a 30% debt to equity. We'll probably be down to 25% towards the end of our fiscal year in August of 2022. And just really solid cash flows, well run balance sheet. Maybe a little too conservative at this point. Where we do have challenges though, or where that's really not even a challenge, it's just a lot of extra work, is in the grain business, producers like to manage their income taxes around that December 31st timeline, right? As a CPA, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And so we'll have a lot of deferred payment grain contracts into January, or just simple request to hold checks until January. And so we'll have a run of $300-400 million worth of checks those first 2 or 3. I'm sorry, $250-350 million worth of checks in those first 2 or 3 weeks of January. And we'll be down to nearly a zero operating line in August, September, and then run that up to $400 million in literally 3-4 weeks. So that's a lot of cash management, and we got some really good people on the team that do that really well. It's not a problem getting the cash; it's just a matter of timing and making sure we got the lines open up correctly.
Right. That's really interesting. I would not have thought of the tax aspect, but that makes total sense. Yeah. It sounds like you've made a lot of investment in technology, and you mentioned that you're heading in that direction, trying to automate more. Um, I think you mentioned in the notes you were looking more into robotic process automation. So that would be one thing. What topics can robotic processing automation cover, and how do you evaluate ROI on those investments?
Sure. Well, for us, out of the gate, I think, this is probably a little bit of looking at the most common areas, low hanging fruit, but, it's accounts payable. We're running, probably 10,000 invoices a month, right?
Wow. Okay.
Between employee expense reimbursements and just general payables. And, I think there's a lot of opportunity there to figure out how to incorporate that into our current processes and just streamline things, make them a little more efficient, as well as, probably pick up some other detection in terms of, matching and catching out of term invoices or incorrect quantities, et cetera, that might otherwise go unnoticed if they're immaterial amounts.
That's a good point too.
Mhm.
Um, your staffing your finance team sounds like a big challenge. I think you mentioned that in the notes as well. How are you handling that, and what have you done to try to remedy that? I know it seems like everybody on the planet's having talent issues and hiring issues.
Yeah, so we're a little bit geographically isolated as well, right?
Yeah.
So when you think of the talent pool, we're very, very fortunate to have the team we do have now. Built some great people, but finding is continually, as you do continually, finding the best and brightest people becomes more and more of a challenge. The tighter the market is. And so we have to reach out quite a ways. We have to think ahead as far as we can. We have to do a lot of strategic talent planning, where we're looking at succession plannings, looking at who we have, who can we develop. We spend a lot of time developing internally, to build that bench and get people ready to go. And at the end of the day, it's just a matter of finding ways that we can retain the top talent and just find as much as we can and always have a really solid bench. Gets a little costly sometimes, right? But our CEO often says, I love this quote: "Our number one reason for growing is to provide development opportunities for our people."
Oh, that's great.
And it's true every day. We see that every day.
That's great. That's a great viewpoint. I'm going to shift to some other topics that you mentioned, again, heavily into technology. When is it time to hire a CIO or a CTO? What's the sort of the jumping off point where you can't have a third party handle it anymore?
Yeah, so I think I planted that seed, right? That question, it's one of those questions that I think I've heard other CFOs talk about, right? It's not uncommon that IT infrastructure and whatnot is reporting up under the CFO. But one of our tenets is continual innovation. One of our core values is continual innovation, and that certainly, we've come very dependent on technology, as well as figuring out ways to become unique in the way we go to market, the way we interact with customers. We're a full service co-op, so we do a lot of relationship building with our farmer owner customers, and technology is becoming a bigger part of that. And so, as we really take apart our strategy, it becomes very obvious that have we structured ourselves correctly to pay enough attention to information technology, to decision making with information, et cetera, et cetera. And so, at some point you have to really, think through, do you have the right people from the organization at the table at the right time when you're having strategic discussions? And that's my viewpoint. And I think you have to weigh those out and kind of plug into that and figure out, do I have the right people there? And is adding a position like a CIO, CTO to the senior leadership team help with that? Or the folks we have managing our IT department, top notch, just unbelievably well skilled and able to manage our IT infrastructures, is that distracting for them? Would they rather just be, I want to say be told what to do, but have the strategy laid out for them?
Uh-huh.
Tell me what we need to get done. And so it's an organizational change that we're really not struggling with, I wouldn't say, but at the same token, just always good to have viewpoints from others on that topic. So I'd love to get your opinion on that, or how you would approach it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of examples that I see out there. I've got several friends who are CFOs of companies that might be 5 to 10 million in sales revenue. They're outsourcing the whole thing. And that seems to work up to 10 million in revenue. Then again, I think the cutoff might be 20 million in revenue and up, where it just becomes too expensive to outsource it to a third party. And you feel like you need to have some internal knowledge. You need to have an employee with that knowledge institutionally and not rely on a third party anymore. And another related comment is a friend of mine, friend of a friend, sold a tech business, and all they did was manage IT for companies 10 million and under. And that was the opinion they gave me. They said by 20 million, people are too big and they really need to have their own person internally. Because as you probably know from your career, it can get really, really expensive. Third party outsourcing. And do they also have enough? Are they responsive enough? Do they have the infrastructure set up to back up everything, to give you access? What about disaster recovery, and on and on and on? So my answer would be 20 million and up.
Gotcha.
That my best guess. Another one is ESG, which is, for the audience, is environmental, social, and governance issues. How does that impact your co-op? How does that relate to running your co-op business?
Yeah, so certainly agriculture is a big part of the climate change discussion, and we're also a big part of society, right? I mean, people love to eat, so food's a pretty important thing to most people, and so as we balance those two and try to understand where we sit and fit into there, I would say, yeah, we probably need to strengthen our understanding of the environmental, social, governance aspects of ESG, and we're doing that. We supply about 20 million bushels a year of food grade corn products, which would be the white corn for the corn tortillas, a lot of non-GMO type food, food grade yellow, other products like that. And so as we deal with those customers, they're asking, do you track your ESG? Do you have a sustainability report or an ESG report? And the answer is, no, we don't. And we've not been complied to. We've not found it a necessity within the markets. But as we grow to understand where things are going within ESG and those three categories, it's, I think, it's paramount that we really understand how we fit in to those ESG scores and how we manage against it.
I wanted to shift back. That's an amazing comment you made about the deferred payments and the dollar amount that checks you're cutting right after year end. How does that lead into interest rate risk management, particularly now that the trend seems to be, or the opinion seems to be, that interest rates are going to go back up? How do you think about interest rate risk?
Yeah, we certainly are looking at that, and like I say, we will be down to near zero by September, October of the year of 2022. Just the cyclical nature of we buy all this grain and then we ship it out, right? We empty our bins and then we prepare for the next fall and next harvest. And so our seasonal lines, those revolver lines, are typically, hard to manage a flat rate or a fixed rate around.
Right.
And we're exploring some opportunities there. And we don't have a lot of long-term debt. We've got some of that hedged off, some swaps in place to manage that. And then we're doing some project financing on some growth projects that would be more of a non-traditional project finance that allow us to fix rates for longer periods. So, definitely a threat for us, and we're just doing all we can to lock in these reasonable rates. That's kind of the interesting thing too, right? We're basically coming off zero.
Right.
So as we move up and we weigh this threat out, it always looks tough to face higher interest rates, but at the same time, if we do get to 2% this year, right, or 2.5% by 2024, whatever the projections are, just think of that and compared to what we've probably seen in the past, Ken, for interest rates. It's not
Right.
maybe as scary as what we think.
No, I remember I was in college in the early mid 80s when remember those 18-20% interest rates way back then. Thankfully I was still in college. I can't imagine trying to be in a business with that kind of interest rate environment.
Yeah.
Crazy. Another point that you mentioned, or an idea, was a GIS coordinator, which is Geographic Information Systems, and spatial data analysts. And if you could explain how those people work in your business.
Yeah. So, a farmer's life is managing land, right? So, they're very geographically based. And of course, we, as a co-op, one of the things we do, the value proposition that we bring to farmers is owning assets that they otherwise couldn't own themselves, right? So they come together, they invest together in core assets around shipping grain to export markets, or processing grain into feed, or being able to receive train loads of fertilizer that then is moved out to them in a lot smaller lot sizes. So in amongst that value proposition, we've got a lot of land assets ourselves that we manage with production assets on it, or facilities. And so, as we move forward to, down this continuum of information technology and data management and information about our assets, both our customers and CVA really don't have a lot of tools to allow us to do that in kind of an analytical fashion, right? So, I mean, we can make. And so what I'm saying is that I want to do more than just make maps. Here's a map of our locations. I want to start looking at the geographical correlation between locations. I want to see what our sales look like across those locations. I want to see competitors. I want to understand what our supply chain looks like, around our locations, and so where our products produced, where are they coming from, where are they shipping to, what's going on in the world around train throughputs and efficiency ratios, and how can that inform how we do business on a day in, day out basis. And so the thought there and the question really is how are companies approaching that. And it seems really hard to find those geospatial analysts, and so who are they, where are they, is this something we can tap into virtually? And any thoughts on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I don't know too much about it. I do know that here I happen to be in St. Louis, and I have people who are part-time farmers. They're not full-time farmers, but part-time farmers say they have property an hour to an hour and a half outside of St. Louis. And I know two people who, before they bought the property, had that GIS work done. So they knew exactly what the dimensions were, the space, the topography, everything before they bought land. Now they're only buying, say, less than 50 acres, probably, but they did use that. They use some type of service.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I can't not recognize that we've got within our agronomy business unit, a group of folks that do agronomy spatial data management, right? So if you Google something like ag big data or a moniker like that, you'll find lots and lots of things on what's known as precision ag. And, precision ag is basically a data set, a spatial data set.
Huh?
Farmers collect a huge amount of spatial data, including the maps, of their fields, harvest data, fertilizer spread data, and we do now. And the thing is that we've got systems in place that kind of do this through macros, if you will. Probably not the best way to describe them, but
Huh?
so if we want to make a variable rate fertilizer map, we've got systems that can do that very easily and send those files out to an applicator, and the applicator will go out and apply one rate on this part of the field and then automatically change the rate to another part of the, as he moves across the field, depending on what the needs of that field is. So we've got that down, right? We've got those systems, but I'm kind of thinking of that next level, right? So from CVA's standpoint, how can we use our locational analysis or information about our geography, those things that aren't part of precision ag, but yet are spatially related data sets for CVA's business model. And that's the part that we're missing. So that's a good call out.
That's interesting. I caught on your website, I was looking at a quote. It said CVA's has strategically positioned itself on both the Union Pacific and Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad lines. And it made me think of the question, are you guys having supply chain issues, whether it's bringing raw materials and goods in or shipping your products out?
Yeah, we are very fortunate. We're actually part of an LLC that owns it's one of the busiest shipping points in the U.S. In Concordia, Kansas, and so we're very familiar with shipping products out on rail lines. And we've also got one of the only locations that has multiple. I think we've got 3 railroads available to us in a location in Iowa that we own and manage. Grain facility. And so, we are very fortunate to do that. It's a huge win for our producer owners when we can arbitrage against the different markets where we're shipping those products out to. And it's fascinating to watch how those markets evolve, in terms of trains and capacities and where products are going and shipping. If you put yourself in the shoes of an Asian buyer, right, or an overseas buyer, no matter where they might be, how do they approach the U.S., right? And you think about all the different trains and the railroads in the U.S. They're really, it makes it a lot simpler when there's less of them. Even though that might seem like an anti-competitive perspective, but in actuality, it makes it a really clean, easy way to move grain and as well products in, right? Fertilizer comes in on those same rails that we're a lot of times moving product out on. And the concerns we have are typically related to when we've got a market situation and rail freight demand is very high. If a bunch of buyers come in and decide they want to buy a whole bunch of grain at one time, overseas buyers, we'll get a little bit bottlenecked in certain areas of the U.S. and those will have repercussions all the way back through the supply chain. So a little late train, we'll have anywhere from 15 to 20 100-car shuttle trains on our calendar per month, right?
Wow.
So that's about 440,000 bushels in one shuttle train. And so, when we stack the deck, we've got to be able to move product, and you throw one monkey wrench in there, and that has pretty serious implications for us. And that's probably the biggest threat to the whole railroad issue right now. But generally, everybody's used to it. I mean, it's very hard to build huge temples for 2 or 3 meetings a year, right? Or 2 or 3 events a year. So you kind of have to take it with what you can and get the reasonable rates you can without having perfect trains every minute that you need it. So
Right. I had just a few more questions. I also noticed on the website you had the for energy and some of the other products, the March 22 contracts out there were in February. So Um, are your farmers, this is a very broad question, are your farmers doing things, is there any use of derivatives to hedge commodity prices at the farmer level, or is that something just the co-op does as a service for the farmer?
Um, well, a pretty broad answer again would be that I don't know. If we have, I think on the high end, maybe 50% of our grain producers will put into some kind of put into place some kind of marketing program that might involve derivatives or hedges or something on their production. That's probably a little on the high side. Even I don't know for sure if anybody has that direct answer. Sometimes we get involved with those programs, and we just know about them. Other times we don't, and they just want a place to ship their grain. And if, we can work around their marketing program, then we'll get their business. So pretty broad there. There's a lot of people in the industry, selling a lot of different marketing products and consulting and programs to producers. We've got some specialty type contracts that we can use to help them to kind of plug into their marketing programs. But otherwise than that, we don't go out and offer any types of trading programs or anything for them. We're not licensed to do that.
Got it. Okay. The March 22nd contract just caught my eye when I looked at the website. Well, this has been great, Fran. I'll wrap it up with one more question. If you had one piece of advice to modern finance listeners, what would it be, broadly speaking, as a CFO?
Yeah. I would say you got to keep an eye on the horizon with your business leads, right? So get to know who knows your business really well, and make sure that you've got the same vision, you've got the same insight to the horizon, what they think's coming at you. It's paramount to be prepared for whatever that is, whether that's financing on a project, or big cash needs on some form of business opportunity that comes up. Like the grain programs that we go through every year. That one happens every year, so we know about it. But you never know when a program like that could crop up. And of course, growth. We historically have doubled in size. We're up to about $2.2 billion this most previous year. We've typically doubled in size every 5 years. And it's been a little bit stagnant coming out of the COVID pandemic in terms of growth opportunities. So we're due for some potential growth, and you never know for sure when that's going to happen, and you've got to have your teams prepared to do that. And if you're organic growth, or a lot of times we'll grow with mergers and acquisitions, two major different things, and be prepared with all your due diligence checklists and your integration checklists and all those things. Keep finance ahead of the change as much as possible.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah. Well, Fran, I want to thank you for joining us today, and for our audience, thank everyone for joining us on Leaders of Modern Finance. So thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Oh, you are very welcome. I enjoyed it, and maybe someday we get to chat again.
Absolutely. Thanks.